Good morning and welcome to the first English session of Career Bootcamp 2021, Taking Your Career Path Virtual. I am Joshua Frame. I'm the National Chair of the Federal Youth Network. And this event is being brought to you by the Federal Youth Network in partnership with the Canada School of Public Service. So today's session right now will be on what I wish I knew at the beginning of my career. And we have a few great panelists joining us today. And Erica Stevens-Rennie, who will be moderating today's session. I will say first off a couple housekeeping items and then pass off to Erica. So first off, use the hashtag CBC_CDC to share any thoughts or comments on social media, so on Twitter or on Instagram. And also feel free to add the FYN on those platforms. I will mention that I'm joining you from traditional territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. I acknowledge that we likely have participants joining us from just about every corner of Canada, and each of us are on likely different ancestral lands of different Indigenous nations, so good to reflect on that before we get started. So as we move through today's session, I would ask that you pose questions only using the question and answer function, so the Q&A button on your screen. As we currently have 900 and likely more attendees for this session, we won't be able to properly monitor the chat. So if you pose a question in the chat, we won't be able to answer it. So please put them in the Q&A, and that will allow Erica to monitor those questions, and we'll be responding to questions as well by text. Over to you, Erica. I will give you a brief intro. So Erica is the moderator for today's session and is one of Canada's free agents. Erica and I met each other about 3 years ago at Career Bootcamp 2018 in Vancouver, and we're very happy to have her joining us today to moderate. So as one of Canada's free agents, she prides herself on being an intrapreneur. So she's passionate about trying new things, keeping things simple, and finding solutions for all kinds of problems. She's been a public servant for over 10 years. And brings policy innovation practices to all of her work, and truly believes in sharing what she has learned along the way. So welcome, Erica, and over to you for today's session. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Josh, and welcome to all participants and to our panelists. I just want to do a quick check here. I know we have Aretha Constant online and Kathy Lusk, two of our panelists. We're looking for Sean Kibbe. Sean, I can't see you on the video feed, but if you have an audio feed, do you want to just say a quick hello so I know you're here?
He's just having some technical problems, and he'll be with us shortly, Erica.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Marcella. All right, so we'll continue. And so I'll say before, I like to do a territory acknowledgement as well. I'm on different territories, and so I'm on the traditional and unceded territories of the Sinixt, the Syilx, and the Contaxa and the Shuswap peoples. And hey, Sean, I see you, and I see that you are connecting to audio now. So. In the interest of time, and I think to sort of get our participants really telling you in their own words about themselves, I'm going to turn it over to each of them to introduce themselves to you. I can say we are in for a real treat today. I had an opportunity to connect with all of them, I think about a week and a half ago, and so many points of connection between them, and I think places where even I just already feel like I have had an opportunity to learn from them and their careers and the choices that they've been making. So I'm going to first turn to Kathy. So Kathy, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll move on to Sean and Aretha.
Thanks, Erica. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Kathy Lusk, and I am the Regional Director for Integrity Services at Service Canada. I started my career at HRDC, as that was what it was called at the time, as a student in FSWEP. We go through the name changes. So I'm at Service Canada now, and I work in integrity services. My passion is human resources, and that's where I've spent the bulk of my career. And I enjoy coaching and mentoring and supporting initiatives like this, Career Bootcamp, which was there for me when I was new and starting out, however, in a different, less technical format. So I'm excited to talk to everybody today and answer questions, and hope everybody has a great time, and I'm pleased to meet everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. And over to you, Sean.
Hey everyone, I've been here for 20 years working for the Government of Canada, so it's actually been a long time since I was originally onboarded. But the benefits are that in the last 3 years, I've worked for 7 different departments. So I've been onboarding an average of, what does that work out to, every 4 or 5 months. So yeah, I'm in the tech sphere, mostly development technology, but then also just places where there's a lot of red tape needs to get through. My experience over the couple decades of working here helps me kind of do that. And the free agencies allows me to move around a lot. So looking forward to sharing some of that knowledge here today.
Thanks, Sean. Aretha.
Thanks, Erica. Hey, everybody. Good morning. My name is Aretha. I'm a director in Service Canada Ontario region. Specifically, I'm the director of Management Services branch. So we do a lot of strategic corporate services, performance, talent management. Like Kathy, I started my career with the federal public service as a student. So with the federal student work experience program, I've worked in a lot of different places and all have been great. A fun fact about myself, I had no deliberate intentions of being a federal public servant. I actually went to school to be a French teacher. And so now, 23 years later, I plan on retiring, not just yet, but I do plan on retiring from the federal public service at some point.
Thank you. And so we'll go to our first question to you, Aretha. But before we do that, a quick note to our audience that really the best way, as Marcella said, to ask a question today is via that Q&A function. So I see some of you are figuring that out and using it. Some of our questions will be answered sort of in the background for you by the people at Fin. So if they're simpler questions, but we will be moving to questions to the panelists, asking some of your questions to them later in the session. So our first question today is, what has surprised you most about your career in the public service? And so Aretha, we'll go to you first, and then we'll go to Kathy and Sean. And feel free to sort of, make this a conversation as well.
Sounds good. Thanks. So for me, I think it's really about the fact that I've been able to have a career that's diverse, challenging, and fulfilling. But I've only had one employer, which is the federal public service. I've worked in 2 federal departments. One of them was Industry Canada at the time, and of course ESDC. And I've had one interchange assignment with a not-for-profit organization that was organized through my employer. But the roles have been exciting and varied, and the experiences have been meaningful and fulfilling. There are so many job opportunities, as well as opportunities for learning and development. And these opportunities are endless. Certainly, we are an employer of choice, and we have so much to offer from a compensation and learning perspective as well. So I think it's about the diversity, and again, just having one employer that's given me many opportunities.
Like Aretha, I would say along the same vein, the biggest surprise for me was the sheer size and the diversity in government. So I come from a small town, Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, where we have HRDC at the time, and it was called Manpower. You didn't go there to find a job. You went there if you needed support because you didn't have a job. That's what I knew of it. So as a student, I thought finding individuals jobs was the best thing that you could possibly do. But you go to school to become something. Similar to Aretha, which is surprising me at this moment, my colleague, I was going to be a teacher, a French teacher. That's a little strange. But once I got into government and I could see how to help people in a different way, I thought that was amazing. When I became indeterminate following graduation from university, and I got exposed to the different departments and the different organizations and all the different kinds of jobs out there, it blew my mind. I had fixated myself into one point of an opportunity. I was going to be, an HR person, and I was going to help people find jobs. It did not occur to me that there was such a variety, a vast volume of jobs. So for me, it was eye-opening in terms of, okay, I had kind of made up my mind all young and knew what I was going to do. And then I had to change it. For the best, obviously. I had a great career so far, almost 20 years. And you see a lot of different things. So being open to that, the sheer size and volume was an eye-opener for me.
Yeah, thanks. I hear a sort of that size piece is a sort of something that made an impression on both of you. Sean, what about you?
Yeah, I think so. For me, the surprise was the amount of positions everywhere available, just the latitude and being able to work across. I think that was one of the main things. But the other thing is that I think needs to really be stated is that there are massive amounts of people in government who really want to make a difference in the lives of Canadians. We do it every day. I remember, this is a long time ago, grabbing a pen in the office. You don't want to grab too many pens. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't know. They just think it's this giant behemoth with people in it looking at their self-interest. But when you see the passion amongst people in government and what they do, and how they take that home with them and how they dedicate their careers, especially, I think for people as they move on, they have other opportunities outside of government as well. And so when you see those people stick around, because there's really nothing more rewarding than kind of like a bit of country service and really helping out the Canadian citizens at a mass amount, regardless of what department you're in or which department you're enabling. That for me was the most pleasure surprise. And fun fact, I was a janitor for 10 years before I became a public servant, and I became one in just sort of a weird way that just kind of worked out for me. But I always heard about how lazy and bad and everything else. And I came in and there's such passion and drive to make a difference. It underpins everything we do every day with Canadians and how we can make it better. So that for me, I want to make sure to highlight is a big one. I see in the chat that there are a lot of people talking about how to get jobs. And I feel like there's frustration when we stand up here and say, all these jobs are available. You just grab them out of the air and you do what you do. But I think I'll direct the questions to others. How did you manage to move laterally once you got in? It looks like a lot of people are struggling with that first step.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. That's a great question. Aretha or Kathy, do either of you have answers for that question?
Yeah, sure. I can go ahead and thank Sean and Erica. For me, it's really about understanding the environment and the people that you work with, asking questions, understanding what's out there, and then being flexible when somebody says, I've got this idea and I don't know how to get it started, or I'm looking for somebody for my team. Why don't you just say yes? Just give it a try. I think that what people often do, or I don't want to assume, but I think that what some people do is, they've got a degree or a diploma and they've got a very specific path that they want to follow. I'm going to go into government and I'm going to do this. And I think having that openness is very important. I'm always the first one to put my hand up and say, yes, I'll do that. I think there's always value in every opportunity. We learn as much from those negative experiences as we do from the positive experiences. And I'll tell you, there are going to be negative experiences. But that's where you learn, whether or not you like something, whether or not you want to try something else. And so I think being open, volunteerism, micro missions, project work, and also being explorative and just like looking around the organization to see what's out there. And sometimes approaching people. You might see someone where you have some shared values and you would like to work on that team. Why don't you reach out to them and see whether or not they've got opportunities? A lot of people are really trying to self-market now, and there's, a lot of pieces up on Facebook and through GCpedia. And so I would encourage people to look and see what's available to them.
The only thing I would add to what Aretha said is when you're on your career path, that path is not a straight line. So, we talked about diversity. Mobility is a huge deal. Now, it's interesting in this environment where all of a sudden we are very virtual. So for me, mobility is what really helped me advance my career. I had to move from little itty bitty Yarmouth to the big city in Halifax, which, for some of you is not big at all. It might be the size of a neighborhood, but being able to move to a place that maybe you never thought of, or as Aretha noted, in a position that you didn't necessarily think was going to be for you, trying things is what's going to help you. And I see some of the notes about, PSRS fatigue. I feel you. I'm with you. PSRS, the online job app, is there. It's how we promote our opportunities, and it is a useful tool. But what some people don't always understand is that we've got legal obligations around staffing to make sure that it is ethical, it is fair, it is accessible. So I would keep at it, but at the same time, networking is critical. Doing the tasks that are assigned to you, exploring different opportunities, and having conversations. don't wait around for somebody to say, oh, hey, I like your spunk. Want to try this? Be the go-getter. And I know it sounds cheesy, but the people who are mobilizing themselves will stand out. So those are the types of things you need to focus on. And it takes time. I did not qualify on the first processes that I applied on. And as a result, due to good timing, I was bridged into the federal public service, which is a concept that sort of exists but doesn't exist anymore. We still have, appointments based on student hiring. Those flexibilities are there. But again, even as a student, your job to promote yourself as much as it is for, us to recognize your talent and hire you in.
Sean, did you have, thanks, Kathy. And Sean, did you have anything more to say about that in terms of, how people should think about their first opportunities, or how they can look and seek and find opportunities in government? I'm just noticing in the questions, there are a few pieces that are around, how do I find that first opportunity right after university? And I think Aretha and Kathy, you've talked a little bit about that, and also about once you're in, how do you think about the next moves, the lateral moves, and the advancement, saying yes to opportunities? But Sean, I wonder if you can say anything about getting that first foot in the door.
Yeah. So first of all, I apologize on behalf of our PSPC and others who our PSC and others. It's a difficult process. HR is one of the last things.
You're on mute.
No, I'm good now. I was going to be the unmute person. Okay. So that's why I apologize, because on behalf of us, because that HR hiring has just been really slow to move, to change. I'll be honest, like it's got to be excruciating. I saw someone mentioning fatigue. I saw, other people talking about the frustrations of not being able to break out of that student, that bridging, looking into that space. And it's basically, it's an open competition. So you're competing with, 30 other million Canadians technically. So it's difficult. But having said that, now there's lots of opportunities to network. There's lots of opportunities to do assignments or other things, even while being a student. Get out there, get noticed, do what you need to do. There's a lot of times people ask for help when they're working in policy and they need technical help, or someone working in more communications branch that might need policy help, and you're good in that. So definitely try and work those networks as well as you can. Not all work environments are conducive to networking. So if you do find one that's branched out, meaning you deal with a lot of other people, there's a lot of FYN meetings potentially, and other things that just allow you to listen to other people's thoughts and maybe connect in. Take advantage of that at every opportunity. I don't do it anymore. I have a pretty busy life with family and other things. But when I first started, I was going to every event I could just to meet like-minded people, and you will gravitate to them like a magnet. And that's what will help kickstart your career is branching out your network.
Thanks, Sean. That's great. And I think together we've hit on a few questions. So I will be going through them and trying to clear some of them into the already answered and dismissed category, just so I can manage what questions we'll ask. We have a very active audience. And so, we'll do our best. What is the best or worst advice you have gotten about your career? So Kathy, we'll go to you first, and then we'll turn to Sean and then Aretha.
Okay, I was bad. I didn't follow the rules. I started typing in the Q's and A's. I was super engaged by all of the questions. Sorry about that. So the best and worst advice, the worst advice that I got was to basically, I was told, find somebody that you like in terms of who do you want to be, right? And emulate them. And I tried that. Okay, so you find somebody in an organization that you like, a director, a DG, ADM, whoever, and, behave like them, do what they do. And it seems like a silly thing, but, taking on the habits or the practices of somebody who's in a position that you foresee yourself to be in someday, maybe to some seem like a logical approach. But what I've learned is that in that process, you can't be anybody but yourself. In terms of success, if you are trying to emulate someone or be like someone else, it's going to cause you stress. It's going to create circumstances where you will be put in positions to say, okay, well, that's not really what I believe, or that's not what I want to do. And you'll find yourself in that position often to say, here, do this the way I would do it. Okay. And it's important to be authentic and to be who you are, because that's all you can be. But I encounter on a regular basis individuals who say, I want to be like you. I say, you should eat more chocolate, possibly watch some TV. Do you knit? And they look at me funny, and I'm like, you should do all that you want to be as yourself, right? You're here because of you. You're not here because you can perfectly emanate someone else. We don't need, Lord knows, we don't need 100 Kathys in the federal public service. We need diversity. We need independent thinkers, and people need to have confidence in the fact that they're here for a reason and that they bring their own strengths. So do your thing. I know it sounds very simplistic, but do your thing, be you, because that's the best way to succeed and move the way you want to move. And you're going to succeed that way. Being someone else, you'll never make it.
Thanks, Kathy. That's great. Super inspiring. It's, I think, something we can all pay attention to. Aretha, over to you.
Thanks, Erica. So I'm going to go with the worst advice. And the worst advice that I did not follow is that my learning and development is the responsibility of the employer. I mean, a part of this is true, right? So learning and development plans, they're jointly established between an employee and their manager on an annual basis. We've got this performance management process that is consistent across the government of Canada. But the content of those plans should come at least in part from the employee. I think that we should all really, really understand what we want each year and invest some time in researching options that are available in courses, opportunities, to give you some learning and developmental opportunities that meet your unique needs. I have worked in operational environments, and I know that there's very specific operational training focused on helping support your work as a payment services officer or as an integrity services investigator. But ultimately, you may have a dream or a desire to do something else. Take that into your own hands. Look to see what's available through the Canada School of Public Service. So many online courses. You might want to mentor someone. Make sure that you put that in your learning and development plan and take charge of your learning and development in your career. There's so many opportunities, and I think that we just need to be aware what they are and put those opportunities in our own pocket.
Thank you. Sean, anything to add there? Your own advice?
So for me personally, I'll give a good and bad. So one thing I learned early on is that you can learn a lot from leaders that aren't so great, let's say, for different reasons, whether it's because of the position they're in, maybe they're having a bad day at home, or there's just a bunch of things that can happen. And what I learned, it took me a while, but what I learned is to recognize, even if they didn't, they might not have been self-aware perhaps, but recognize the things that impacted you negatively as a worker underneath them, and mentally note those, because once you develop your career up, I think you will find that the days get a little longer and it's a little more difficult. The patience gets a little shorter sometimes as the important files come up and the buck stops with you. So remember those things. So I think you can learn a lot from great leaders, and you can learn from a lot from leaders who might not be doing as well at the time. The other thing I'll add, I see it in the questions, is talking about regions and remotes. There's no better time to be looking to get into government right now. I just hired a consultant, and it wasn't until yesterday that I realized he wasn't even in Ottawa, and I'd been talking to him for a few weeks. It really doesn't matter. It's in terms of like geographic diversity, we are on the cusp of like, it doesn't really matter where you are, even if we're going back into the office X amount percentage. So I will say to you, it might be a little longer that it's fully conducive, but I'll tell you right now, I don't think anyone's looking to hire to make sure someone comes into the office each day. So if you are in remote Nova Scotia, you have just as much opportunities as if you're in Gatineau or if you're in Ottawa. So keep your head high on that one. And I think you're going to see a big change coming up as the posts start coming in and things lighten up a little and we begin to rehire more.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. There's a lot of signals. I think that you're exactly right on that, that the pandemic, it's not been something any of us would have wished for, but it has opened up tremendous opportunities for individuals across Canada. And I think a really amazing opportunity for our public service to finally start looking like the rest of Canada. And so there's a few questions in the question about that, about should I move, should I not move? You've heard some of our panelists already say, I did move. I was one of those as well, but I made a different move. I moved from Ottawa to Vancouver, and then during the pandemic, moved from Vancouver to a much smaller area of BC. So you can think about that, the move as connected to your career and as distinct from your career, especially after the pandemic with telework. Now we'll move to our next question, which is what has helped you to get where you are, and what advice would you have for others who want to move in a similar direction? So there are people who have indicated in the chat that they want to move into careers similar to you all, and certainly people who are looking to sort of regularize their employment in the public service, to move from being a casual to being full-time, to move from being a term or a student to being indeterminate. So what advice would you give them to kind of set them off in that direction in terms of becoming full-time public servants? Or in directions like quite particular to the career paths that you all have had. And we'll start here with, we'll go to Sean first, and then Aretha, and then Kathy.
I was answering one of the questions, to be honest. What was the question? Quick, I was typing. You're on mute now.
How about I go off mute?
There we go.
What has sort of been your recipe for success? So how did you get where you are? What advice would you provide for individuals who are looking to either sort of become, instead of a casual, a student or term, to a full-time indeterminate? And then also quite particularly in your case, Sean, like, for people who want to move into like either free agency or a more technical career in government or HR. So when we think about the career paths that you all have had, what advice would you provide to people?
Yeah, so for me, other than networking, on technology, which is so fast paced, and it's like a slingshot, because there's so much of government that's far behind, and so it kind of lags as technology moves forward, and then there's big jumps, and those gaps are kind of where I fit in, where I kind of bridge those gaps between new and older technology. So I've found my niche there, and I think for others in tech, to find your niche, find what you love, find the thing that keeps you up at night. Because you can't help it, and you get out of bed to code some more, or you get out of bed to read more documents. Find that area, and then just be the best at it, and do it to your fullest abilities. I think that's true across the board, but in technology, I can't, like, it just reboots every 3 months, it feels, in the tech sphere. So you have to stay on top of it. I think the good side of Twitter, which is getting smaller every day, but the good side of Twitter, there's a lot of people active in the technology that are talking about what's new and what's next and what they like. So keep your ear to the ground on that stuff, and then in government, network and get involved in every hackathon that's available, or anything other areas of technology. Just be in it, immerse yourself in it, and it's going to give you the best opportunities to go forward.
Aretha, over to you. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks so much. So I've got a couple of responses for this one. The first one is being flexible in my approach and really understanding the difference between wants and needs. And, not all job opportunities are glamorous or exactly what I want, but as an outcome, I might get what I need. Again, and I think we've all said this, but we learn from both positive and negative experiences in the workplace. Values and ethics has always held me in very good stead. I lead by example. I treat others the way that I want to be treated, and I extend respect and empathy in all circumstances with which I'm faced. Civility in the workplace is so important, and I think sometimes it's lacking. I believe in the basics. When I'm in the workplace, if I see somebody, I say hello, good morning, you're welcome, and thank you. And that applies to everybody at every single level. Every time I see somebody for the first time on a video conference or on MS Teams in the morning, I say good morning. I don't kind of get right into it. So trust your instincts. If it doesn't feel good, ask why, because your values are really, really important. I would also say don't be afraid to move laterally. Lateral moves are valuable and important and offer a lot of learning. I think that often people think, okay, I'm going to get into this job, and then my next role is going to be 1 level higher and then 2 levels higher. But there's a lot to be learned with lateral movements. And, in the region, we've got corporate and also operational roles. And I actually started in operations, set my managerial role aside, set aside my exclusion, and went to a corporate position, which was fantastic. But I really excelled in that corporate position because I brought with me that operational learning, again, at the same level. So don't be afraid of those lateral moves, always good options.
Thanks, that's great. Kathy, over to you.
Excellent point there by Aretha. The lateral move is critical. It's going to enrich your experience. It's not a slowdown. It's not a pause. There's often the perception that up, up, up is the way to go. But I can tell you the best career moves that I've made were lateral. And I've done that at least 3 times. And the value that it adds to your toolkit is amazing. Like, it's underestimated. In addition to what my colleagues have given, I would, in terms of success, patience. Let's not joke. Government can be slow sometimes. I love my job and I love Government of Canada, but sometimes it takes a little while. So having some patience and knowing that opportunities will come is something that is part of the reality. So, biding your time and being patient is important. Self-awareness, and Aretha touched on it, and so did Sean. Having a self-awareness about your skills and your abilities and knowing what you're doing and how to talk about it. This is something that people often forget. I'm just in the process of typing an answer to keep in mind when you're applying on jobs. It's almost like that 10-second interview in the elevator. If I asked any one of you right now to describe what you do, could you do it? And based on our standard, to demonstrate your experience or demonstrate how, or the fact that you have the ability to do something, you have to say how you would do it. It is not simple to say you've done it. I'm a millionaire. I wish, I wish. But you have to say how. So it's good to practice, write down how you do your job, what you do, and it's going to help you build scope and really demonstrate so that, if you're networking with someone virtually, happen to be face-to-face in a future time where it's safe, 6 feet apart, whatever it is, you can say, this is what I do, this is the scope. And people are going to say, okay, yeah, I understand what's going on. And that self-awareness usually trips people up when they get to the interview and they get asked a question and they haven't given it thought. It's all in there, but you haven't given it thought. So that's important. And the last thing I would say in terms of success is sharing. That expression people will say is cheesy. Information is power. I have never once in my career withheld information or knowledge on what I do from anyone. And all that does is bring people closer to you. It builds a network. It builds a community. If you withhold information, you're the only one in the organization who does that. If something happens to you, that's not good. That's a weak spot. You want to be the sharer, and people who share, nobody's going to run off and steal your shine. It's actually the reverse. It's going to help grow. So those would be the things that I would say helped me succeed.
I love that last point, especially Kathy. Being transparent and showing our work has been a big passion of mine. And I can say I totally agree with you that not only is it not going to hurt you to share, I think when people recognize you as someone who wants your team to get better and succeed, like that actually only helps you. I'm seeing a lot of questions around how do I get into comms? How do I get into policy? And I just want to do a quick shout out to the Government of Canada's communities of interest and communities of practice. You can find those on GC Connects, GC Collab. And if you're in the region, you can look at your local federal council. They're often run through that. These are amazing networks of people who are working in those fields, but they're not closed practices. So if you have an interest in being a communicator, those are great places to say volunteer, come into contact with other communicators, network with them, find volunteer opportunities at their conferences, and get experience that way too. So for new public servants, I think that's an amazing resource that you have. I'm going to do our next question. This is an audience question, so a bit of a surprise. This one is not question 4 for us, as we discussed for panelists. And this question is, it would be my dream to work for a government organization in which I share an intrinsic passion for their mandate. So this person is suggesting Mental Health Centre of Canada, Women, Gender Equality of Canada, but of course other people in the Q&A session are highlighting different organizations as well in terms of innovation hubs, etc. So how can we express interest to be recruited for those organizations, and where do we put our foot in the door if there's no current openings? That's a great question. And Kathy, you're in HR, so I'm going to go to you first on this one, and then we'll go to Sean and Aretha.
So one of the things I would first do is challenge you. So for example, if you want to work in mental health, to what extent? So for example, there's no government organization right now that isn't talking about mental health. And there are ways to be involved, whether it be working groups, committees to support mental health in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of major transformation and change. However, if you are a health specialist, obviously there are organizations like Health Canada. There are organizations that are associated to Government of Canada that provide support, such as Employee Assistance Program, LifeSpeak, where you can work and support Government of Canada, federal employees, and provide resources that way. It's all about the networking, right? So right now, if you are all public servants, you all know someone, you all have a boss, you all have a person you can talk to say, how can I have access to that opportunity? So for example, in Service Canada, we have a wide variety of jobs here. It's a little bit crazy, the variety that we have, but we hire nurses, we hire investigators, we hire adjudicators, we hire people who process, we have call centers. So if you are communicating, leverage those networks, leverage your team leader, your manager. If you are in committees, as Sean was referencing earlier, make friends, not for the purposes of getting ahead, make legitimate friends and build relationships so that people can sponsor you to say, you know what, that Erica, I really like her. She's hardworking. She's interested in this area. How can I, help her leverage this relationship to get into this organization, right? It's building those relationships and credibility. The last thing you want to be is the person who just wants something from someone, right? You go to somebody, you build a relationship before you need something, a common interest, and that's how it grows. So it's a little bit of a fluffy answer, but it is 100% effective in terms of networking. So those would be some of the ways that I would go about it.
Thanks, Kathy. Sean, over to you.
So what was the question again? I'm trying. There's so many good questions in this. I'm trying to get through them. They're so awesome. There's it's just amazing to watch. Yeah. What was the last one?
The question is for people who are interested in working in organizations that don't currently have posters. How do they sort of indicate their interest?
Yeah, I agree with Kathy. Most of the things you'll find that you want to do are happening in every department. So when we look at, in your case, I saw the question about diversity in women's. There's everything going on in every department. And I'd be very surprised if there was one that there wasn't. So you can have opportunities there, which then give you what goes to the other thing that was said, which are laterals. It's easy to lateral. That's one thing I will say. It's easy to call someone up and say, I am so interested in what you're doing right now. I want to do that with you. I'm not running from a job. I'm running to a job. And that's a lot easier to get in. On that same line, I see people talking about how do I get my foot in the door to talk to somebody? How do I, those things. That's actually the hardest way to get in because it kind of promotes a favoritism. How did you get the coffee with that person? And it just feels a little bit awkward. So open processes are better to do when you're looking at getting a full-time position or you're looking at a promotion. So that is just a different way. If you want to work in an area that you like, or you want to branch out your skills and be interested in, or you're interested in something other than what you're doing, then in that case, networking, calling people up, but then the lateral is much easier. So I'll say that to everyone. If there's an area that you like, it's a lot easier to lateral over and take those opportunities. I think I'm averaging every 2 years outside of the free agents, which I'm blessed with having that ability. But before that, even every 2 years I was switching jobs. And because I like the startup mentality, I'm not as good at the maintenance mentality. So I'll add in also understand what you're good at and what you're not as good at. And I've been able to peg that down for myself. I'd also say in the technology sphere, my workplace caught up to me, to be honest. There was a lot of backwards thinking in the technology space for a while. And it eventually sort of caught up with newer methods of doing things, which I was more adept to getting hold of. So part of that is too, that the machinery sometimes has to catch up with you, especially if you're really passionate about what you're doing.
Thanks, Sean. And Aretha, we'll go to you on this question if you have anything to add, and then I'd love for each of you to respond to the question that a couple participants are asking, which is, so how long do I stay in a job, and when do I know it's time to move on? So Aretha, over to you if you'd like to jump into that one, or go to this question on how do I indicate interest if there's no openings.
Okay, so one thing that I'll say really quickly with respect to interest in something, whether there are openings. We've touched on mental health, we've spoken about anti-racism, diversity, and what I would say is that there are also opportunities for you to pitch or create your own worth position within an organization. So in Service Canada, we have a project suite. And I think it's really important that we look to leverage those project suite positions. I was very interested in what's happening right now in the world, of course, with respect to anti-Black racism. And we didn't really have that community of interest or a focused area of dedicated, a work team within Ontario region. And that is something that I put my hand up and said, let's do this. We've got the project suite. You can pitch positions, great ideas. And I think myself as an employer, I'm always interested in really, really good ideas. And so that's one thing that I would offer. And Erica, you had a second question. I want to make sure that I cover that as well.
Yeah, so that's how do people know when to leave? So people are asking, how do I know when it's time to move on? How long should I stay in an opportunity?
So I will tell you that I don't have the answer to that question because I do a lot of things based on instinct. For me, I think there's a natural cycle in a lot of positions. When you first get into the role, you're just barely getting in. You've got a good 6 months to a year, depending on the role, to learn, to grow and develop. I think by the time that you get into year 2, you may not have mastered the role yet, depending on what it is. You may only start at that time making a contribution. I would say that by year 3, you definitely, I would hope that you had mastered things or that you feel comfortable enough to move on. But what I would say is I don't want to give that advice and expect everyone to follow that advice because it's very, very personal and it's very specific to their circumstances. I'm a mom. I am very focused on my family and I need to make sure that the roles I take put my family first and that I continue to put my family first. And so I like to make sure that whatever I choose meets those needs. And so depending on what my family needs are, depending on what my personal circumstances are, I may need to pivot and do something differently. So I think that's what I would put out there as advice on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Aretha. Sean, I know you're a free agent like me, so you move around a bit more frequently. Do you have anything to add on this topic?
So short of saying spider senses, that's what I call it. I think some things are a bit more natural for me. So I have to get out of that mindset when I'm speaking to others who are beginning their careers or just in the middle. I would look around and you start to see things go in different directions that are just kind of against what you think oftentimes. So that's when it's probably at its worst. But I would also say to be brutally honest with everyone, like when people start leaving an organization, especially as you're starting out, other people know more than you do, a lot more, when you're new in a place or when you're new in government. And so those for me are pretty strong signals. As you see management leaving, not just 1 or 2 people leaving, that's fine. But if you see people really start to take off, then you're probably in for a dip in the team or group or branch. I don't know why these signals just the way they are, and people get some intel before you would. So I would watch out for those things. But I would also say, if that's your style, your startup mentality style, that change happens a lot and management turnover happens a lot. And sometimes that's a good thing. That kind of breathes life into new ideas and allows more space for people who might have not felt they had space before to speak, because they then are the senior to other people who are coming in. So I wouldn't say you definitely move out, but those are the signals that happen when an organization is probably looking towards austerity or looking to do a big shift in direction.
Thanks. Those are great answers. And Kathy, I'm going to ask you a different question because a few people are wondering, how do I make my application in FSWEP or in the online jobs.gc.ca sort of poster system? How do I make it pop? How do I make it stand out? Do you have any advice for people when they're looking at those posters? How can they respond in a way that'll get them noticed?
Sure. So, you know, HR in government can be a bit clinical. And I do say that because we go by the law. I do love HR. I always say it's my mothership. But a lot of what I do in terms of mentorship and coaching is to sort of help people navigate that process, because if we are not careful, we risk losing good candidates. So one piece of advice that I give to anybody that asks is basically, for us, in order to demonstrate that you meet the legal definition of demonstration within a staffing process, is to say how you did something. So I said before, you simply can't say, I managed people. We will not infer, especially from outside. We will not infer, we will not guess that, Aretha must have done that if they manage people. We have to have proof, and that is you demonstrating specifically what you did. Now that you're inside, whether you're a student or an intern or a free agent, you have the ability to give a scope and richness to whether it be screening questions or on your resume. So rather than saying you manage people or you write reports, I call it all encompassing. Don't do it, right? So rather than saying that you write reports, you could say, I produce reports for scope, a manager, a director, a team leader, for a regional initiative, for the Atlantic region, for the province of British Columbia. And you're starting to give scope and size to what you're doing. Not only am I producing a report, but I'm providing statistics and analytics. I'm collaborating with people to gather information, and you start to hear activities and richness comes into your resume. You would be surprised how many times we see resumes from people outside that say, I did administrative tasks, right? And, trying to figure it out. What you want to do is add richness. What are those administrative tasks? Because admin work is incredibly critical. I have 2 admin supports. I would not get through the day without them. There is no lowly job. Everybody is valuable. But without that richness and context, we can't give you the credit for the skills that we need to see. So remember that self-awareness, talking about what you do every day, and explaining what you do and who you do it for. My admins serve 8 managers and 22 team leaders in the Atlantic region virtually. That sounds a lot more impressive than doing admin work. You know what I mean? So that would be the advice that I would give. Okay.
That's great. Thanks, Kathy. And there's so many questions. I'm not going to go to Aretha and Sean on that because I think we've heard from a real expert there. That's helpful. There's some questions here about hard conversations with managers. So 2 pieces that are coming up here, and I'll leave it to you to choose which angle you want to take. We'll go to you first, Aretha, on this one. So one, how do you have that difficult conversation with your management about telling them that you've assessed it's your time to move on and you're applying for jobs? Do you tell them you're applying for jobs? How transparent to be? And how can you sort of recruit your manager as a supporter in your professional development and your career? And then sort of the flip of that is like, what if you already know you don't have a supportive manager in that, and you've seen signs of that in terms of there's not support for your professional development, there's not support for training, all of that. So how do you manage those conversations and manage your career in either of those circumstances? So we'll go Aretha and then Sean and then Kathy.
Thanks, Erica. So for me, those conversations need to start before you actually get into a situation that you want to leave, be it with a manager that is supportive or a manager that is not. We've got this performance management process and it's fantastic, 3 performance management conversations a year, but those shouldn't be the only 3 times that you're really having those conversations with your leader about your expectations, your needs, and your career goals. And so, as soon as you feel like, maybe I want to look for something else, I think that you've got to be transparent. You've got to be open and honest and let your manager know and let them know what the reasons are. Sometimes it's not because you don't like them. It's because you'd like to experience something new. It's because you're trying to, seek better work-life balance. It could be for a number of reasons. So I would say, be honest and be upfront. And how do you kind of recruit them, to be on your side? I think what you do is you do your job. like you do your job in the best way that you can, because your results and your outcomes are indisputable. I mean, you do what you do and you do it well. And if you need help, which we all need, you ask for it. Because ultimately, you know, when you go to apply for a new opportunity, you may be asked as a requirement to include your most recent manager, current manager, you know, last two managers or leaders as your reference. And so I think being authentic and being upfront about your needs and what you're looking for, really important in this space.
Thanks. Sean, over to you.
Yeah, I agree with Aretha. I think the open conversations have to happen. If you have a management that doesn't allow for open conversations, then it's obviously a bit more sticky. But you know, myself as a manager and the greatest managers I feel I've worked for or reports to, it's always been easy to have an open conversation if you're honest. And if you don't come in with kind of a bitter attitude and a like, how am I deserve this, I deserve that, but going in and say, this is the way I feel. I don't think I'm getting this. I would like your advice on it. This is where I want to be. You should be able to get something out of that. And don't, you know, you can't always expect that the environment's going to shift your direction, but I hope that you would expect honesty and I hope you would get it. That's one thing I'd add is that you need to understand there's lots of balls being juggled in every organization. And sometimes there might not be the best fit for you at the time, even though there might've been before. So having that clear, honest conversations are going to help you out, I think immensely, and hopefully you get it. And if you don't, then that's super unfortunate because sometimes that does happen. But I would hope that you can have an honest conversation. I know everyone I've talked to loves hearing the sit down coffee chat with an employee who says, I'm not happy and this is the reason why. What do you think of this? So as opposed to, you know, just being unhappy and not saying anything, wouldn't be good. I noticed a few of the questions about private sector experience too. I will say to everyone from the private sector coming in after many years, it is appreciated, especially in the tech sphere, because we know you've been exposed to a lot of things that people within government haven't. So sometimes it's not our instinct to appreciate private sector experience over government experience, but I'd say hang in there. The majority of people I know do. So if you're feeling that you're left out or your private experience isn't on par with government experience, I'd suggest having a real conversation on that too. So, and then off to Kathy, I think.
The only thing I would add to what my colleagues have said is to be factual and respectful. So no matter how challenging a conversation is, or how difficult it might be, if you are respectful, you should be okay. Managers, we're not perfect, right? We're all human, but go in with the facts. Don't go in with your impressions. And if you feel, you know, that it's a moment where you are charged with emotion, and that things are boiling over a bit, there is ultimately no harm in postponing that meeting or that conversation so that you can gather yourself and present things. If you need to write them down, go to the facts. And if you're talking performance and you're talking career progression, look at your PA, look at the comments and use that information that your manager or leader has written about you to say, you've said that, I'm good, that I'm performing well, and I'm hoping to engage in a conversation with you about, some progression within the organization, right? If you go in there with that rather than, how do I get out of here and get to something better, it could be better received. Everybody's got an ego, and I'm not saying that's right. My firm belief is that good managers develop you and let you go and let you grow. And I didn't mean to make that rhyme on purpose, but it did. And it's hard because we develop and we invest significantly in staff, but really we are supposed to be growing people to replace us, to move into the organization for the betterment of Government of Canada. That's the point. So for me, respect and facts, that's the big piece.
Thanks, Kathy. I saw on my screen, I almost felt like heads nodding as you made that last point there. So thank you for that one, Kathy. The next question that I'd love to have you answer is around anything you guys can share about career advancement as someone is asking, as a person of color, part of a visible minority group within the Government of Canada. So if you have any thoughts on that. And then Aretha, I noticed there's a question very specific to you, but I'll ask it too, and any panelist can answer it as well. And it is around exploring GBA anti-racism work and what's happening in government around that. So Aretha, we'll go to you first, and then we'll go to Sean and Kathy, or we'll go Kathy and then Sean.
So really interesting. Any question I love with respect to anti-racism, inclusion, diversity, definitely really important. Not just because we're seeing it on the news, but because so many of us are living it. And I am always very clear to people that, you know, I'm an employee, I'm a leader. At the end of the day, I'm a Black woman, you know, with Black children. And I'm trying to make sure that what we produce, develop, have in front of us as a public service is something that my children will be proud of. In terms of supporting Black racialized employees or supports required for Black racialized employees, I think it's always helpful to have someone that you can talk to, you know, a network, a mentor, or a sponsor. You know, I don't know why yet, and I'm not an expert on racism and race, but the facts remain that as you move up to the senior levels within the federal public service, you see less and less Black faces, less and less racialized individuals. I'm trying to work on right now why that is. I'm working with the task team. I'm working with the organization to try to sort this out. I think that we all are. So it's a hard question and I don't have the answer, but I would say make sure that you personally have what you need that you think will help you succeed. And, you know, I have started leading some anti-racism work, and I met Kathy. And Kathy and I have now joined this network of each other. it's her and I. And we're getting together to chat and just to have a conversation. There are so many different layers and elements to being a racialized employee in the federal public service. You know, mental health is a big deal. And I think by reaching out to people that can support you, really, really important, and having those shared values and shared lived experiences. So where you can get a network, get a mentor, have conversations and be open. I don't know a lot about what's happening with the GBA Plus and kind of anti-racism or diversity work in the organization, but I will say that within Employment and Social Development Canada, we are looking at a lot of work around GBA Plus at a policy level, how it relates to racism, but also those pieces around intersectionality. And, you know, these are all words that I'm learning as well, but, you know, it's not just about being Black or, you know, being transgender, but what about that intersectionality, and what about the challenges or what you're faced with when you are a Black transgender individual, and what does that mean? These are new conversations, and I really think that, you know, if the conversations are being had within your organization, then invite yourself into those conversations. Share your views, support some of the research, take part in a working group or in a conversation. I definitely think that that's the best way to start.
Thanks, Aretha. And Kathy, we'll go to you next. If you have like one minute to respond to that. I think, Sean, we're going to pass over you on this one because we are so close to being out of time. This has been an amazing conversation. So Kathy, I won't take any more your time to answer the question.
I'm going to say super quickly that there's a lot of initiatives going on for persons of color, Black public servants. Right now, I'm the project lead for a program that is going to put a number of Black public servants in director level positions, thanks to a reach out by the Federal Black Employees Caucus. That is a network that you can join and join a community. So there is a lot of work going out there towards, you know, increasing representation. We've seen the call from the clerk with regards to Black public servants, Indigenous public servants, persons with disabilities. employees. There's a lot of push and energy there. And the other thing that I would like to note is that Aretha's right. Invite yourself to the meeting. There's no harm, and I have no shame in saying there's a lot of fear at all levels in government to talk about racism, discrimination, because nobody wants to say the wrong thing. But if you invite yourself to the table, and I always promote making a safe environment to learn, it is appreciated. It can be intimidating, but it is very appreciated, and it opens the door to communication and learning, which I personally think is the key. So that's what I'd like to say, Erica. Leave it there for you to finish.
I love that. And what a great note to end on. Wow, this has been an incredible conversation with the three of you. I feel like I've learned lots. I've taken notes. And together we've answered 111 of some 200 questions. So bravo to you all. The questions are really so rich, and I'm grateful for all of them. I'm sad we couldn't have an extra 3 hours together. I know some of us are online. All of us are on LinkedIn. Sean and I are on Twitter. You can probably also find us and a host of other public servants as well on GC Collab, GC Connects, Twitter, Facebook, all the places. These are great questions. And the people we've had as panelists today are certainly experts, but they are not the only people who can answer these questions for you. Some of the best answers you'll find will be inside yourself. I think we've heard that today from some of our panelists, but also some of them are technical questions. So check out community of interest and other mentors and leaders in your life. So with that, I want to thank you for attending today. And I want to encourage you to attend the myriad other sessions that are happening today as part of Career Bootcamp, both in French and English. Great opportunity if you're an Anglophone to check out a French session, or vice versa if you're a Francophone. And I would add that Fin is an incredible organization that over the course of the pandemic has offered a myriad of learning opportunities that really meet learners where they're at. So if you are not already connected to them on their mailing list, checking out their websites, I would encourage you to do that. And I would add that on this final topic, I know that Fin in particular has some sessions coming up. They partnered with the Federal Black Employees Caucus, which is an incredible group of public servants. And so for those of you who had interesting questions on that topic and you feel like you still want to dive deeper on there, I'd encourage you to check those out as well. Fin, can I look to you to put links in the chat on those things? And I will say again, a deep and heartfelt thank you to Aretha, Kathy, and Sean, as well as Fin for all the backup, and to all of you for your incredible questions. Thanks, and have a great day.